17 minutes to 7 now on Morning Report. Well, National says that Labour's planned boost to the student allowance makes it vulnerable to exploitation by people who are on the job seekers benefit. They're warning that decoupling the allowance from benefit levels creates an incentive for beneficiaries to sign up for tertiary education, even if they have no intention to study. Let's talk now to Paul Goldsmith about this. He is the National Party's Tertiary Education spokesperson. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Guy.
Thanks for coming into the studio. What is your primary concern here?
Well, there's a broader concern around the tertiary policy, which is we've got the new government coming in with a hiss and a roar with some very major changes in tertiary education. The biggest one, of course, is moving away from the 30-year idea that people should make a contribution to the cost of tertiary education in terms of their fees. It's only about 20 or 30% at the moment, but that's been the case for a long period of time, and they're doing away with that, which is very, very expensive. The second thing is, as you said, boosting the student allowances and decoupling it from the benefit rates, the job seeker rates, and that can have consequences as well. And so when you put those two together, we're looking at about probably, they haven't come up with the figures, we haven't got any detail or data, but we're looking at possibly about a 25 to 30% increase in the total tertiary spending, all on student support. And that's an issue as well that we can talk about. Let's
zero in, though, on the allowances, because you have some concerns that if you increase this by $50, so it'll be $50 higher than the job seekers benefit, right? What most people call the dole.
Yeah.
And what do you think people will do as a result of that?
Well, I think, as I was saying, you've got these big changes in a very complex area. And I was only minister for 10 months, but that was 10 months enough to know that this is an incredibly complex sort of system where you pull one lever and something else unintended happens down the line.
What is that fair?
The worry here, of course, is that if you created an incentive for people who are on benefits to move across to being a student, then everybody would celebrate if anybody who's normally who's unemployed and generally wants to go into study and become a student and prepare themselves for the modern workplace. Everybody celebrates that.
Celebrating it?
Well, we do. Well, that'd be great.
But that's the idea of the policy.
But we're not naive. It's possible that there'd be some who would say, "Well, hang on a moment. If I can get extra $50 a week by being a student, I'll do that." And therefore,
that's the same thing, though, isn't it? They are then being incentivised, are they not, to go into tertiary education?
That's a good thing. Yeah, we do, and we want to make sure people are genuine students because they're being provided with a course. The courses cost $15,000, $20,000 a year for ratepayers, for taxpayers, and so we want to make sure that scarce education resources are generally
so let's be clear about this, and let's use plain language. What you are frightened about is that people who are on benefits are going to sign up to a tertiary course for the extra $50 and then just sit on their bums and do nothing.
And
is that your worry?
They don't have to pay any fees. Well, not be serious students. Yes, absolutely. There's a risk.
I put it to you that's a pretty cynical view of life.
Oh, no, it's just it's a reality in the sense that is why for a long time those rates have been aligned. That is the reason why they have been aligned, so as not to create disincentives within the system, so that the system is nice and clean. So there's no financial advantage to moving from one group to another group.
That's an extraordinary admission. So you're saying you kept the benefit and the student allowance the same, so as not to make anyone leak over into the tertiary system. I mean, you could see it as a disincentive to joining up in the system and keeping people on the dole.
No, I mean, everybody in this country, I think, wants to see young people, particularly in education. And that's why there's been massive investment in that area. We've got a huge amount of investment in programs that are in place to try and find that spark of inspiration that everybody needs to get into education. We're all in favour of that. All we're wanting to... The main point I'm making in all this is that you've got massive changes going through the tertiary sector, which will have profound consequences. And it's all happening. We don't know any of the detail yet, and it's all happening within the next 4 weeks. And we're not going to be going off to having select committees and figuring out what will be the potential unintended consequences of these changes. And what I'm pointing out on this area, and there's about half a dozen areas similar that I could point to, and say, well, hang on, if you do this, well, what will be the consequences for the incentives that people have?
For sure, but would it be such a bad thing if some people almost unintentionally, you're straight into tertiary education from being on the dole.
It's always a great thing if people get involved in education, absolutely. But we want to make sure, and what I'm saying is, they're spending an extra potentially $1.5 billion a year on the tertiary sector. It's a lot of money that could be spent on a whole lot of other things. And we want to make sure that every one of those dollars is focused on people who are genuinely keen to learn, and that the way that the benefit system is organised does not create a disincentive to do that.
Just finally and quickly, what sort of proportion of people do you think might do this? I mean, just trying to work out.
Look, it might be very small. I don't know, and that's the point. We don't know that. I mean, as the one of the student representatives pointed out, when you take in the accommodation supplement into account, a lot of people are still better off on benefits. But there is a small group who, I don't know the size of it, who, if they're living at home, would be better off shifting across to becoming a student. And we just want to make sure that the government has thought through these the consequences of these changes. And there are plenty of other things. So I mean, we're talking about a government that's quite keen to talk about focusing on inequality and so forth. And yet their biggest decision that they're making in tertiary education is pouring extra resources into the sons and daughters of some of the wealthiest New Zealanders so that they can have even cheaper education. And so there's a lot of inconsistencies.
All right,
here.
and we're going to put some of those to the Prime Minister we're going to have on the show after 7 this morning. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Paul Goldsmith. He is the Tertiary Education spokesperson for the National Party. It's coming up to 11 minutes to 7. I think we better get to Jonathan Mitchell with the full wrap of the business news. Good morning again, Jonathan.
Antamari, this Monday,